Tatpatam Shri Bhagavan Vacha Yogasya Lakshanam Bhakshe Shri Patmaje Vidina Satpatam Shri Bhagavan Vacha Yogasya Lakshanam Bhakshe Sabijasya Patmaje Mano Yenaiva Vidhinam Prasannam Yati Tatpatam Shri Bhagavan Vacha Yogasya Lakshanam Bhakshe Sajasya Patmaje Mano Yenaiva Vidinam Prasannam Yati Satpatam Shri Bhagavan Vacha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Yogasya, of the yoga system, Lakshanam, description, Vakshye, I shall explain, Sabijasya, authorized, Nripa Atmaje, O daughter of the king, Manaha, the mind, Ena, by which, Eva, certainly, Vidinam, by practice, Prasannam, joyful, Yati, attains, Satpatam, the path of the absolute truth. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear mother, O daughter of the king, now I shall explain to you the system of yoga, the object of which is to concentrate the mind. By practicing this system, one can become joyful and progressively advance towards the path of the absolute truth. Please repeat after me. The Personality of Godhead said, My dear mother, O daughter of the king, now I shall explain to you the system of yoga, the object of which is to concentrate the mind. By practicing this system, one can become joyful and progressively advance towards the path of the absolute truth. Purport. The yoga process explained by Lord Kapila in this chapter is authorized and standard. And therefore, these instructions should be followed very carefully. To begin, the Lord says that by yoga process, one can make progress towards understanding the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the previous chapter, it has been clearly stated that the desired result of yoga is not to achieve some wonderful mystic power. One should not be at all attracted by such mystic power. but should attain progressive realization on the path of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, which states in the last verse of the 6th chapter that the greatest yogi is who constantly thinks of Krishna within himself, or he who is Krishna conscious. It is stated here that by following the system of yoga, one can become joyful. Lord Kapila, the personality of Godhead, who is the highest authority on yoga, here explains the yoga system known as Ashtanga Yoga, which comprises 8 different practices, namely Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana and Samadhi. By these stages of practice, one must realize Lord Vishnu, who is the target of all yoga. There are so-called yoga practices in which one concentrates the mind on voidness or the impersonal, but this is not approved by the authorized yoga system as explained by Kapila Dev. Even Patanjali explains that the target of all yoga is Vishnu. Ashtanga Yoga is therefore part of Vaishnava practice because its ultimate goal is realization of Vishnu. The achievement of success in yoga is not acquisition of mystic power, which is condemned in the previous chapter, but rather freedom from all material designations and situation in one's constitutional position. This is the ultimate achievement in yoga practice. Om Ajnanathmirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Shakshurmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuda Pada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrajadam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Thamsa Jivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaganvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Putale Shrimadhe Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Desha Vancha kalpa tarubhyasya kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha namo mahavadanyaya krishna prema pradayate krishnaya krishna chaitanya namine gauratise namaha He Krishna karuna sindhu dinabandho jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sude Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukham karoti vatsalam pango langaite girim yat kripatamaham vande Shri Guru Shri Tinatarinam. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. Offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Tavivasmi, na jivami tavivina. Idhi vigya devitvam nayamam charanantikam. Hare Krishna. Good morning and welcome to this morning's Bhagavatam class. We are starting a new chapter chapter 28, Kapila's instructions on the execution of devotional service. Kapila's instructions on the execution of devotional service. So, in previous chapters, Kapila Muni instructed the Sankhya philosophy to his mother, Devahuti. And then he went into the details in the previous chapter, understanding material nature. And he starts by explaining how one can gradually get himself out of, get his mind purified out of the contaminations of material nature. So around verse 21, Devahuti puts her hand up and says, the verse, Animita nimitta swadharmena malatmana. What is that verse? Swadharmena malatmana. Tivirena mai bhaktya. So just before this verse Kapiladev quotes, Devahuti puts her hands up and says, look, the process you are explaining to liberate one's mind, it sounds impossible. Because the mind is being always contaminated by the material energy. It's, we are living together with this material energy for time immemorial. And these material nature, or the three modes of material nature, is constantly attacking the living entity or the mind. So how do you expect that it is even possible to purify the mind and then focus on the self? So Devahuti makes this point. It's what you're suggesting sounds impossible. So to answer that question, the verse I quoted, Kapiladev starts with that, and he starts describing devotional service, various forms of yoga, devotional service. And then he describes about what are not the goals of devotional service and what is the goal. And then he continues from this verse onwards, where he starts describing Ashtanga Yoga. In this chapter, he describes the Ashtanga Yoga process. And he goes on to describe about the various stages, steps involved in Ashtanga process. So when currently, especially the world what we are living in, when we say yoga, we immediately think of what the yoga schools nowadays teach. Some postures. That's what comes to mind. Similar, when we say avatar, what comes to mind? General for people, James Cameron movie comes in mind. When we say avatar, generally speaking, we're not thinking about Krishna appearing in this material world in his original form and exhibiting various pastimes. Now, that's not something what people generally think of an avatar nowadays. When you say avatar, they think of some blue people running around in forest made by James Cameron. Similarly, when we say yoga, the nomenclature or the nomenclature of yoga has been slightly misled to just, the various postures, standing on head postures, what's been taught. That's what people consider as yoga. But when you look at Bhagavad Gita, where the concept of yoga is introduced by Krishna, there's many forms of yoga he speaks about. The first time he refers to yoga is verse 248, Yogastha Kuru Karmani Sangat Tyakta Dhananjaya. And then he goes on saying, Siddhi asiddhim bhutva samatvam yogam uchyate. So in 248 he starts talking about yoga. In that verse he says yoga means being equiposed, samatatvam, without being agitated by siddhi, asiddhi, without being agitated by success or failure, while you're prescribing your kuru karmani, yogastha kuru karmani, your prescribed duties. And he says that is called yoga. He says that in second chapter. And then in few verses, in 253, he says, Shruti vipratipannate tasa Shruti vipratipannate tasa what's that? Anybody remembers that verse? It's quite a beautiful verse. Quite love it, but I keep forgetting. Shruti vipratipannate tasa yada tasyasi nischala samadho vachara buddhi tata yogam avapsyasi. Then he says in 253, Arjuna, consider that yoga you're in yogic state if your mind is stable. Nischala. The mind is usually chala. Chanchala Mihimana Krishna. Mind is always chala, or moving here and there, jumping here and there. We will discuss that later. But if the mind is nischala, and when it is pointed towards me, then you can say you're in yogic state. So what I'm getting at is, as progressively we move forward, Krishna gives various definitions of yoga. The mic is gone? Okay. Where was I? Yeah. Progressively, Krishna gives various definitions of yoga. And similarly, Kapila Dev here speaks about Ashtanga Yoga. So we have to understand the context where Kapila Dev is speaking this. When I say context, when we look at Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna was disillusioned, he wanted to set out, and he wanted to give up his swadharma, and he decided to do the same yoga process what Kapila Dev is going to teach, the Ashtanga Dhyana Yoga process. He wanted to give up his duty, he wanted to go to the forest, and he wants to do Dhyana Yoga. And the predecessor of the Dhyana Yoga is the Ashtanga Yoga. But Krishna forbids him. The whole of second chapter and third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is gradually talking Arjuna out of performing the same thing what he is describing here to his mother. It's kind of perplexing, isn't it? He gives all the points to make Arjuna think that the karma yoga is much more better in your circumstances to perform than the jnana yoga which you want to go and do it. He says, neha abhi karmana sosti pratyavayana vidyate svapamat apyasi dharmasya trayatyo mahato bhayat. The karma yoga process, where even if you do a little bit, it can save you from future dangers. So better do karma yoga instead of dhyana yoga. So what it means is dhyana yoga, you have to do it in complete. You can't just pick and choose. He also says, you have various previous, you're used to performing karma. So it's easy for you to just dovetail it to me. By doing that, you're situated in, you can achieve liberation. You can achieve perfection. And then he he talks about his previous samskaras. So the point what Krishna makes is, look, this dhyana yoga, even though it is a bona fide process, but it is not meant to you. One other reason he gives is you are constantly, people look up to you. You're not an ordinary person. People look up to you. Since you are looked up, you better practice a process which everyone can practice. And he gives an example of Janaka Maharaj. Even though Janaka Maharaj was a great exalted devotee who is qualified to perform the Dhyana Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga, he still chose to perform the Karma Yoga, Karma Mishra Bhakti, because he wanted to set up an example to the living entities who are not qualified. So Arjuna is being talked out by Krishna not to perform the same process what he is describing. So the understanding is, it's not like the process of Dhyana Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga is not bona fide, but it depends who the practitioner is. It depends who the practitioner is. What are the qualifications of those practitioners? What are their previous qualifications? In Arjuna's case, he is not, at least for the point of conversation, he is not somebody who has controlled his material desires. At least, just for the argument's sake, he is still in the process of self-realization, understanding the self, and he is also a prince who is surrounded by a lot of luxury. He had same number of wives as Krishna had. There's so many wives Arjuna had. Everywhere he went to conquer, he married the princesses there. So he's in the middle of everything, and he's a prince. He has duties to perform. People look up to him. So in those circumstances, for Arjuna to give up his swadharma process, which will be explained in the next verse, is not advisable. Not only advisable, Krishna actually calls him foolish. Asochayan anvasochasvam. You're talking like a fool. You want to give up and go and practice a yoga which is not meant for you. But for the context or for explaining, he does go ahead and explain the process of Dhyana Yoga in chapter 6. He goes into the detail and explains the Dhyana Yoga. But when Krishna explains how the Dhyana Yoga is performed, Arjuna says, yes, you're right, this process is not meant for me. The endurance required for this process is not capable. This is the verse before Chanchalam hi mana Krishna. The verse before where Arjuna says, what is that verse? Arjuna said, O Madhusudana, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady. So Arjuna says, I can't do it. And the reason he gives is, Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramati balavadritam tasyaham nirgramanya vayureva hi dushkaram. He says, you are asking me to do a process which is like controlling the wind, trying to hold wind in your hair. It's not possible. It's just not possible for me to perform. Even though Krishna playfully pokes Arjuna by glorifying him about his previous glories, such as he calls him as Dhananjaya, a great conqueror of wealth. He calls him Savyasachi, a great bowman. To be a great bowman, to be a Savyasachi, you have to have very controlled mind. Even a little bit of distraction, your destination is all over the place. You need to have absolute focus. So he calls him Savyasachi. So it means a bowman, an expert bowman who is very qualified in controlling the mind. So here Krishna pokes him with all this. Famously, he calls him Pritha, one who comes under the son of Kunti, who has a very great lineage. So in various names, Krishna pokes Arjuna that, hey, you are a very qualified person. As friends, they make fun of each other. But still, in spite of all these qualifications, Arjuna says, no, I can't do it. Chanchalam hi mana Krishna, I can't do it. So this is the process which Arjuna says, I can't do it. That's what explained here by Kapila Muni. And one might ask, why is he explaining something which is not possible for Arjuna? Well, it is not possible for Arjuna, and it is not possible for people like us. But there are people which it is possible. And who those people are? The people are, example is Devahuti. Yeah. Even though she is in a woman's body, Devahuti is not an ordinary person. She is a great soul. Usually a woman has 3 stages of life. One stage is being under the protection of the father. That's stage 1. Stage 2 is under the protection of a husband. And stage 3 is under the protection of her children. These are the 3 stages of a woman. For man there's 10 stages, but for women there's 3 stages where she's under the protection of these, under various protection. But in Devahuti's case, all her protections are not ordinary people. For example, her father, the first stage, her father is Swayambhava Manu himself. Yeah, Swayambhava Manu himself. Swayambhava Manu is Shakti Avesha avatar of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he heard the knowledge directly from his father Brahma. So he's not an ordinary person. And then her husband, Kardama Muni, great yogi. To the extent that because of his yogic power, even Supreme Personality of Godhead personally made him a visit. Came to see him and gave him all the benediction. And not only that, when Devahuti wanted to have a family life, he manifested all varieties of mystic yoga processes or mysticism. Like he created a huge floating palace with hundreds and thousands of maids, and these floating palaces just went to all the heavenly places. It's not like, as Prabhupada says, it's not like our 737 which we invented, which just goes from one destination to another, but it can't even stay in one place, it has to keep flying. But the palace, what Kardama Muni created, can travel anywhere and park itself anywhere, where then Devahuti and Kardama Muni can enjoy. So her husband is also a very great yogi. And the third stage, where she is in now, under the protection of her son, Kapila. And Kapila is not ordinary person. Here, Sukadeva Goswami calls him Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. He addresses, Sukadeva Goswami, Sutta Goswami addresses Kapila Dev as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the direct expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And Krishna is Yogeshwar. He is the master of all yogic system. All the yogic system are subservient to him. So, Kapila Muni, his mother, or Devahuti, her teacher or her guru, happened to be her own son, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, in these circumstances, Devahuti is capable to perform the process which Kapila Deva is going to explain, the Ashtanga Yoga process or the Dhyana Yoga process. And in previous verses, when Narada Muni explains her glories to Kapila, or no, not to Kardama, she is also considered, Narada Muni explains, that Devahuti have mastered the yoga process. Even when she was, even not before, when she was not even married, when she was just young, she has mastered the yoga process. So for her, yes, this Ashtanga Yoga process, what Kapila Dev is describing is possible. It's possible. For general public, this information is just for our knowledge. Of course, there are some corollaries around this yoga process which benefits us too. Where one has to, in previous verses, it'll be described that one has to lead a secluded life, one has to follow celibacy, one has to live equiposed, samatvam, one has to control his senses. All these principles still applies to what we are living in, but the process here, it's just, it's very difficult for us to perform. It's not easy. So in here Prabhupada quotes the last verse from 6th chapter. What is that verse? Yoginam api sarvesham adgata antaratmanaha shraddhavan bhajate yoman same yukta thamo mataha. He quotes that verse. In the purport, Prabhupada says there are various yogas. There is Ashtanga Yoga, there is Karma Yoga, there is Jnana Yoga, there is Raja Yoga, there are so many yogas. And the culmination of all this yoga is Bhakti Yoga. If a person is capable of performing Bhakti Yoga, and all other processes are not required. If you look at Chaitanya Charitamrita of the first chapter, Krishnadas Kaviraj says, thank God, Mahaprabhu has come and gave us the process which is devoid of the teachings of Patanjali and Kapila. He says, look, all this process given by Kapila or Patanjali, it's not going to work for me. Thank God Mahaprabhu came and gave the process of direct devotional service. So, where was I? So Bhakti Yoga is the culmination, of all other processes. Instead of, individual living in this age, not wasting their time in all the other yoga processes, must just perform the Bhakti Yoga process. Okay, let's just look at the purport here. Here, the first line quite important, where Prabhupada says in his purport that the process, yoga process explained by Kapila, is authorized and standard. It's an authorized process. It's not a process which was cooked up. Even though we are not capable to perform, but it is still authorized process for someone who can perform. Okay? And what gives the authority? What makes a process authorized process? If somebody comes up, like what we can see nowadays, many schools, they come up with their own, not just yoga schools, there's different people come up with their own religion, come up with their own means for being happy spiritually, But what makes a process authorized or a standard? The answer is in Srimad Bhagavatam, where Yamaraj instructs his servants, where he says, what is that verse? Swayambhu Narada Brahma, Kapila Prahlad Bali, Vayasaki, something, I can't remember the verse. Yeah. So he talks about any process which is endorsed by these people, these Mahajans, then that is the authorized process. And one of the Mahajans is Kapila. You know what Yama says, Swayambhu Narada Brahma, Kapila. So he quotes Kapila. So, if a process is endorsed by Mahajanas, then it is considered an authorized process. In Harivamsa or Mahabharata, Tarko Pratishta, Shruti, what is that? Shruti, many Shrutis. What is that? Do you know that verse? Tarko Pratishta, Shruti. There's a word, Sanskrit word for many. And the last verse is Mahajanena Gatascha Pantaha. So Mahaprabhu quotes this in Madhya Leela. So the tarka or dry argument could never, apratishta, could never firmly come to a conclusion. And Shruti is Vedas, have many injunctions. Many injunctions which we can't really say which is the right injunction. So for an intelligent person to accept a process is the process given by the Mahajanas. Mahajanena gatascha pantaha. The path put forth or set up by the Mahajanas. That's a standard process. So when we take up any process for our self-perfection, one has to ask ourselves, is it based on the teachings of the Mahajanas? Not because a glamorous person comes and then he comes up with an idea, or a so-called guru comes in or so-called yogi comes in and he says, do this transcendental meditation and give me $20, do this and do this yoga poses. It's bona fide. No, it has to be Mahajanena Gatascha Pantaha. So any process which is recommended by the Mahajanas. So what is that process recommended for this age? Here, Devahuti asked Kapila, in my situation, what is the process? It's very similar to the poem what Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings, Anadi Karma Phale, Pori Bhavarna Jale, Tori Bare, Koi Upai. She's in a similar mood, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, like what Devahuti says. Abhin Anadi Karma Phale, due to unlimited Anadi. Anadi means for long time ago. From that time, I've been enjoying or suffering karma for various fruitive activities which have accumulated. And this is, because of these fruitive activities, I have fallen deep. Podi means fallen deep into Bhavarnava Jale. This ocean of samsara. I have fallen into this ocean of samsara. Tori Bare means, I was just asking the Bengali boys the meaning for it. These karma which have accumulated, I have to suffer. There's no way out. There's no way out. I have to, whatever I was sown, I have to reap. So this karma phala, I have to reap. Tori Bare. And I can't see any hope. There is no hope for me. This is the mood in Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings. And that is the similar stance where Devahuti also is speaking. But, for Devahuti, Kapila has given a process which is going to work for us. But for us, we live in an age where even people like Arjuna cannot follow the process what is recommended for her. So what is our state? Even Krishna says, okay, what is that? Was after Chanchalam Himana Krishna, he says, Bhagavan, what is that? Asamshaya Mahabaho, Manam Durnigraham Chalam, Abhyasena tu Kaunteya, Vairagena tu Vidyate. Says, yes, you're right, the mind is hard to control, but by Abhyasa and by Vairagya, you should be able to. That's for Arjuna. But for us, we can't do any Abhyasa. what kind of abhyasa? Abhyasa means, exercise, or, keep practicing. Like Ashtanga, the asanas, various asanas, and dharana and pranayama. And those, even if we practice that again and again, day in, day out, we can't perfect it. There is no way we can control our mind. And vairagya, what kind of vairagya we can practice? What kind of renunciation we can practice? If it is, if it is slightly cold, we don't want to come to Mangalarti. That's our status. What to speak of vairagya, practicing real renunciation? So even though it is, Krishna says, by vairagya, by abhyasa, you should be able to do it. But in reality, it's very difficult. And also, the destination of this yoga process recommended is to meditate on Krishna in his Shyamasundar form all the time. Sitting in a secluded place and meditating on Krishna, his Shyamasundar form. In 6th chapter, the last verse, and the purport, Prabhupada talks about the object of meditation, what the yogi should meditate on. He talks about Shyamasundar form. Krishna is blue in color. You're meditating on a form where Krishna is blue in color. He's wearing the forest garland, Vanamali. He's playing a flute. His face is like a moon, a sun, effulgent like a sun. His face is like a moon. This is the description. And this is what the end goal of this meditation process, what Kapila is telling. And similarly, similar description is also given when Dhruva Maharaj sees the Lord as an object of his meditation, a Shyamasundar form. And the word used is Nayana Abhirama, a form which is very pleasing to one's eyes in Dhruva Maharaj. So we can't sit in one place and focus and meditate on this Shyamasundar form. It's just not possible. Atma Tattva Prabhu, Prabhupada Isabel used to give this example about mind, especially the mind of Kali Yuga. It's a funny one he used to say. I'll try to improvise what he said. He's a good speaker and he's a bit of a comedian. So he used to say, like, when you walk into the temple, I don't know how applicable is this example, at least in India, when you walk into a temple, you want to secure your shoes. If you don't secure your shoes, you come out of the temple, the shoes have disappeared. Even nowadays in Mayapur, the local devotees have, two different colors of shoes. Like the right shoe will be in one color, left shoe will be in one color, so people won't steal it. So Atma Tattva gives this example that, you're coming to the temple, you're late for Bhagavatam class or Mangalarti or whatever, Darshanarti. You're rushing into the temple, you leave your shoes and you forget to secure it. And you come inside, you're attending the Mangalarti or you're sitting and chanting your rounds. But the mind, instead of concentrating on the activity, whatever you're doing, the samsara prayers or sitting and chanting, the mind has jumped to your shoes. It's thinking, oh, I forgot to secure my shoes. And then he says, and I'm going to improvise here, and he says, and the mind is keeping, oh, I forgot to secure my shoes, somebody's going to steal my shoes, somebody's going to steal my shoes. And then the mind jumps from there and says, anyway, it's old shoes, it's an old pair of shoes. I need to get a new shoe. Even if somebody steals it, I'll get a new shoe. And then the mind jumps and says, we are in May, next month is June. There is sales. Anyway, I need to update my shoes. In June sales, I will buy new shoes. Okay. I'm buying the new shoes. I will also maybe update my wardrobe. I may get some new clothes. Maybe if I get some new clothes, the opposite sex might notice me. Why is the opposite sex not noticing me? And then the mind will say, oh, they are not noticing me, I'm still single. oh my God, how long I'm going to be single? So, and then the mind has completely gone somewhere. From your shoes to you being, you being a single guy or a single woman, and meanwhile, the singer of some Samsara Praise is telling Premadavani, Jai Mission Pad Paramhamsa. The Aarti has come, you touch the Aarti, somebody has sprinkled the water, somebody has given you the flowers, but you've been thinking about the shoes, the mind has been occupied with the shoes and buying clothes and being present in the temple. Same thing with your chanting, Sometimes you put your Gayatri and you start, first mantra, and then you're thinking, it happens to me all the time, and then thinking, oh my God, I finished the Gayatri, the last one. I don't know, did I meditate on the first Gayatri, the Guru Gayatri, the Mahaprabhu's Gayatri, the Krishna Gayatri. What happened to all those mantras? But I'm almost on the last mantra. So this is our mind. Where are we going to concentrate? Concentrate on the Nayana Abhirama. So this process is not possible. So what is possible? Now can you sing that song? Or play? I will sing the song if time permits. So let's see the Upai. Yes. I don't know. I know only one melody. Parama Karuna. I'm just going to exploit that. Okay. Can somebody play the mridanga? If possible. So I'm going to exploit Chitahari Prabhu's harmonium playing skills. So the Upai, what Bhaktivinoda Thakur is asking, what is my means of liberation, is answered by Lochandas Thakur in this song. I will just sing the first 2-3 verses and then we can go to questions. Parama Karuna Pahui Dujana Nitai Gaura Chandra 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 Sabai Avatar Sarasi Romani Sabai Avatar Sarasi Romani Kevala Ananda Kanda Kevala Ananda Kanda Bhaja Bhaja Bai Chaitanya Nitai Suhrda Vishwasha Kori Bhaja Bhaja Bai Chaitanya Nitai Surda Vishwasa Kori Vishaya Chariya Sejase Majiya Mukhe Bolo Hari Hari Vishaya Chariya Sejase Majiya Mukhe Bolo Hari Hari Parama Karuna Bahudui Jana Nitai Gaura Chandra Parama Karuna Bahui Jana Nitai Gaura Chandra Tekore Bai Tribhavane Nai Emono Doyala Data Dekore Bai Tribhavane Nai Emono Doyala Data Pashupaki chure Pasana vidare Shunijare gunagata Pashupaki chure Pasana vidare Shunijara gunagata Parama karuna Pahui dujana Nitai Gaura Chandra Parama Karuna Pahui Jana Nitai Gaura Chandra Samsara Majiya Rohilo Poriya Sebade Nahilo Asha Samsara Majiya Rohilo Poriya Sepade Nohilo Asha Apana Karuna Punjaye Shamana Kohoye Lochana Dasa Apana Karuna Punjaye Shamana Kohoye Lochana Dasa Parama Karuna Bahui Jidana Nitai Gaura Chandra Parama Karuna Bahui Jidana Nitai Gaura. Okay, that's the answer. The process is recommended by Bhakti Lochan Das Thakur. He says, Parama Karunam Bahui Dujana. The most magnanimous people is this Bahui Dujana. This two individuals. Nitai and Gaurachandra. Nitai Nityananda Prabhu and Gauranga Mahaprabhu. Of all the avatars, Sabha avatar, Sarashiromani, of all the avatars Krishna has taken, not the James Cameron movie, Krishna's incarnations, of all the Sabha avatars, Shiromani, the crest jewel of all this incarnation, is this Gaura Nitai. And the process, what they set forward, because of being Parama Karuna, is Kevala Ananda Kanda. It's absolute bliss. Kevala means there's nothing else. It's pure Kevala Bhakti, or only bliss. Kevala Ananda Kanda, blissful. It is not like what Arjuna says, what you're talking about is not possible for me. And then Krishna says, if you want to practice this process, go and do abhyasa and vairagya. Nothing like that. And the process set forward by Mahaprabhu Nityananda is Kevala Ananda Kanda. Bhaja Bhaja by Chaitanya Nitai. And then Lochan Das Thakur says how to follow this process. Start by chanting Chaitanya and Nityananda's names. So that's what we do. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So Bhaja Bhaja Bha Chaitanya Nitai. Suhrida Vishwasha Kori, with positive faith, with a positive approach, with a suhrida, friendly or positive faith. And what? Vishaya Chadiya, giving up material desire for sense enjoyment. Seja se majiya, mukhe bolo hari hari. Always chant, with your mouth, the names of Hari. Chant the Hari. So that is the process set forward. I'll come to question and answer later. Parama Karuna. Pahidujana. So the age we are in, the circumstances we are in, with the amount of agitated mind we have, the process set out by Kapila or Patanjali is not achievable. So what is achievable is answered by Lochan Das. Start with Bhaja Bhaja Bhai. Oh brother, start singing the names of Gaura and Nityananda, and then always chant Krishna's name. Hari Hari. And this is the recommended process for this age. And through this process, one can achieve the same success what is promised for Devahuti is achieved by us easily. So, based on the injunction by Lochan Das, we perform Sankirtan. We chant Krishna's name. And that was propagated by Mahaprabhu himself. Like Kapila, incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, propagated the Ashtanga Yoga, Dhyana Yoga process for Satya Yuga. He appeared as Mahaprabhu himself and propagated the Sankirtan movement. And this Sankirtan movement is not only for the benefit of the practitioners. The Ashtanga Yoga process is only beneficial for somebody who practices it. It's like Baba Vibhushana, you're performing Ashtanga Yoga, your neighbor is not going to get any benefit. It has to be, the individual has to perform. But the Sankirtan movement, set up by Mahaprabhu, or the loud chanting of Mahaprabhu, not only benefits the practitioner, it also benefits everybody who happens to hear it. Everybody who listens to this holy name. You chant loudly, listen to it, you get purified, and you are dragged into the process of devotion service immediately or later, some or other. That's why, even though now our society, I'm going to be a bit critical here, even though our society has ventured into learning yoga for preaching, in my humble experience and opinion, it doesn't work. It only makes fringes. It never really makes devotees. Because this is not the process recommended. The process recommended for the Yuga Dharma by the Parama Karuna is Sankirtan. Going out, chanting the holy name loudly, singing and dancing. And by this process, we purify ourselves, we purify others, and once they are purified, they become devotees. And that is the Yuga Dharma. So in that note, I will stop here. I was hoping you can sing the harmonium and I was thinking to quote that song, but I wasn't planning to sing. But anyways, it's a hard one to sing. A different melody. When you come to my place, you can sing. All right, I will finish here and take some questions or corrections.
You mentioned in the earlier part of the class that the predecessor of Ashtanga Yoga is Jnana Yoga?
No, the predecessor of Jnana Yoga is Ashtanga Yoga. Dhyana Yoga. Yeah. Which is explained in 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Sorry? Oh, sorry. The question is, he's just confirming what I said, that the Ashtanga Yoga process is a predecessor of Dhyana Yoga, which is explained by Krishna in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which Arjuna initially wanted to do, but hearing about it, he said, nah, I can't do it.
In the shloka it's mentioned as two words, Ripa Atmaja, or daughter of king, and Mana, the mind.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, is there any specific significance
Yeah,
in Kapiladeva pointing Devahuti as a Kshatriya, and more importantly, not suggesting to concentrate on the influence of intelligence rather than mind, which I believe is about the mind.
Yeah, where is this one? What is, okay, let me just see. Okay. Yeah. Paja manaha, the mind, or mind, yena by which certainly, okay, mano ye vaina viddina. Okay, well, Prabhupada gave a lecture on this particular verse, which you can hear. It's a nice lecture. He spoke on this verse in Hawaii in early 1970s. There he addresses this Nripatmaja. When Devahuti says, look, you're telling me to liberate the mind, but it is not possible. It doesn't seem to be possible. How, what do you want me to do? That is her conundrum, which she puts forward. So Prabhupada says that while he's prescribing her the Ashtanga Yoga, Dhyana Yoga process, because of a qualification, he is being a bit, encouraging Devahuti that he's not addressing her as my mother or something, but he's addressing her as Nripatmaja. Nripatmaja means daughter of a king or an emperor. So he's flattering her, this is what Prabhupada uses, he's flattering her to say, you're not an ordinary person, for you, this yoga process will work, to encourage her. So for somebody of Devahuti's stature, this process of controlling the mind through the Ashtanga Dhyana Yoga process is possible. So that's what he's emphasizing. And just because he's emphasizing for Devahuti doesn't mean it is possible for us. But yeah, she is an exalted person. That's why I try to, explain the first part of the class, where she's not an ordinary person. Her father is so and so, her husband is so and so, her son is so and so. So she's very exalted, and she's a master of yoga already. So for her, it is viable.
Question is, Karma Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and Dhyana Yoga, do they belong at themselves and they think about that power is enough to achieve liberation?
Yeah.
Karma Yoga has a full trust in rituals. Dhyana Yoga,
Mental speculation, yeah. Yeah, dhyana, yeah, meditating, yeah. Yeah, look, this is answer.
Is it true or I just wanted to confirm it. Is it? But we, as Vaishnava, we believe only in mercy of the God.
Yeah.
We do not believe in our mind or body or
Intelligence, yeah.
And in all previous practice like karma, dhyana, and ashtanga yoga, without adding bhakti for that process, they cannot achieve liberation. Is it true or not?
Yep. Yeah, it is true, and Prabhupada, it is absolutely true. Prabhupada discusses that on the purport of the last verse of 6th chapter. Yoginam api sarvesham adgata antaratmanaha shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yuktatma mataha. So there is all this yoga process which you explained, and he says the best of the yoga process is one who always thinks of me internally. So what does that mean? Always thinking of Krishna is bhakti yoga. So all these other processes of karma, jnana, is to bring one to that bhakti yoga process, okay, which is always thinking of Krishna. All your activities are performed for Krishna. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. And Prabhupada says that the culmination or the of all this yoga process is Bhakti Yoga, and and he says it's confirmed in 8th chapter, text 14. Ananya Chetasa Satatam Shruti Smaranti Smaranti something Tasyaham Sulabham Partha. So 8th chapter 14th, he says, yes, the culmination of all this is Bhakti Yoga, where an individual is Ananya Chetasa Satatam, always thinking of me. And that is possible in this age by the Sankirtan movement, by chanting Krishna's name, by doing devotional service, reading scriptures, and not by standing on the head.
When Lord Brahma meditated for first words which he heard,
I understand your question, where you're going with it, so I'll just reply instead of going through the translation. So your question is, well, Brahma meditated and he got to see Krishna. Well, he didn't get to see Krishna, he heard the instructions and then he got to see Krishna, but still he didn't mature in his devotional service. Even though he got to see Krishna, he didn't mature. That maturity happens when during the Brahma Vimoha Leela, where he admits and he has a change of heart, and then when he takes up devotional service during that pastime, that's where change of heart happens. Even though he is a great yogi, that because of his meditation, even he is able to see Krishna and got instructions how to create this material universe, which is a very complex universe. He was still performing Jnana Mishra Bhakti, which is Jnana predominantly with a little bit of Bhakti. But when after the Brahma Vimoha Leela, he appreciates his position, and then he becomes pure devotee. Or it's not like he became a pure devotee. This pastimes to just give us an example, and we can even say he even appeared in Gaura Leela, and then assisted Mahaprabhu to perfect his.
we are truly lucky that Brahma is devotee.
Yeah, and we follow his sampradaya. Yeah, we come in this lineage, but so the bhakti is, you have to come to bhakti, otherwise all these other processes are useless. Yeah, okay, I will come to that. If I'm going over, I'm happy to sit and answer. If others want to go on by your life, you can. Yes, you get mystic yoga. Look, it's funny that this verse, Prabhupada spoken many things about it, and there's just so much things you can deliberate on this. Mystic yoga, I'll come to you. Mystic yoga, you get mysticism or some power not just by performing the Ashtanga yoga process. You can get it even by performing devotional service, because devotional service is the topmost yoga system, and all other yoga systems are its subsidiaries. So it means what you can achieve through a subsidiary, you can achieve through performing something which is superior. You might ask, what mystic yoga do I have, or what devotees have. Prabhupada gives himself as an example, where he says, look, I'm an old man who came to the West with nothing, and because of my mysticism, I made all you people devotees who have no background in any culture. According to Vedic culture, you need to have some standard, to leap into devotion service. But with no pre-qualification, from absolute lowest of the lowest background, I've made you into devotees. and not just ordinary devotees, but pure devotees of the Lord, practicing pure devotional service. That is, he quotes himself, that is mysticism. That's, he's using his mystic power. Yeah. Yeah. So, and the other example is given is, like, for example, the boys go out and distribute books. These books, nobody is interested in these books. It really doesn't cater for the needs of the common man. But these boys are very good in distributing this book. One boy distributed this morning there was like 30 books distributed, and that's mysticism in the sense they have some power to go and give and take money from people who have no interest in them. That's mysticism. They're exhibiting their mystic power. So they're using their mystic power in Krishna's service. Does that make sense?
So it's not necessary from their mystic power, as long as you use it, discharge Krishna's service.
Yeah, even if you have the mystic power, you use it for Krishna's service. Yeah.
Maybe we do practice bhakti,
Yeah, you can distribute books and go on a Harinam. By those processes, you exhibit your mystic power.
Thanks a lot for your interesting class. And you mentioned Prahlad Pr, and as well you mentioned yoga and mystic power. And my question, and as well you mentioned that Bhakti Yoga is top of all yogas, and even Krishna is the Yeshwara, like the main mystic of everyone. Sometimes, because we know that some evil mystic like Tantra Yoga is still in India, for example in West Bengal or in Orissa, and we know that some of people still practice that. On the one hand, devotees should not, maybe would believe, but shouldn't think about that because devotees are always under protection of the God. But on the other hand, we know example of Prahlad Pr, who was truly affected by some tantric mystic when he tried to perform devotional service in
He was not affected, his daughter was affected.
Just please can you tell us to us what is our correct mood? Because even if his daughter was affected, but
Yeah, it
we know
affect.
that
Yeah,
he got some arthritis and some
yeah, some pain. Okay, yeah.
just maybe you can explain to us a little bit more. What is our correct position of our mind and about how should we think about that? Because no one wants to be affected by some evil mystic and
Yeah.
What's the crux of the question?
The question is,
what is the correct position of devotees according to black magic?
yeah,
And should we completely trust that Supreme Personality of Godhead will protect us?
yeah.
Or should we concern ourselves like, no, I'm not in the position of
Bhaktivinoda Thakur, yeah,
his daughter was affected.
Yeah.
It's better to go to some black magic and do some rituals.
yeah.
What is the correct
Yeah, what should be our mood? Did you understand the question? Did you get the question? Yeah, okay. What is the mood? Look, the mood is, it's not just black magic which can affect you. If just living in this material world, there's many other factors which can affect you. Like, you're talking to the devotee next to you and, he might turn around and, hit you. And I'm not telling he will do it, but, it could happen, you're just walking in the street and some crazy guy comes and hits. So it could happen, based on our previous karmas or whatever, it could happen. And not necessarily, how do I put it? A sober person will retaliate in the same mode of ignorance he's been attacked by. So, in case of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, whatever circumstantially, or to set us an example or to teach us. He was, or his family was, temporarily affected by some black magic, and coming out of some yogic mystic powers, which was misused to attack a pure devotee. And if that happens to us, we follow the same footsteps of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. The solution what Bhaktivinoda Thakur did was chanting Srimad Bhagavatam, and that was his remedy. He chanted Srimad Bhagavatam, and we have access to Srimad Bhagavatam. We chant Srimad Bhagavatam, and reading and chanting Bhagavatam is not only the cure. It's not only just helping us to progress in devotional service. It is also the process to counteract all the negative influence which we have. The three Adhyatmik, Adibhautik, Daivik miseries which we have put through. And for some of the individuals, the Adhyatmik, Adibhautik, Daivik could be through black magic, and for some of us it could be